She likes your powers. Can she have them? Here's your look at the new Hasbro Marvel Legends Xmen 97 Marvel's Rogue. Bring the excitement and wonder of the Marvel Universe to your collection with Hasbro's Marvel Legends Marvel's Rogue and other X-Men action figures. This collectible 6-inch action figure is detailed to look like Marvel's Rogue from Marvel Studios' Xmen 97. Marvel's Rogue Marvel Legends figure is fully articulated with premium design and posable heads, arms, and legs. The Marvel action figure comes with 2 accessories. Hasbro Marvel action figures 6-inch scale make them great for posing and displaying in fans' collections. Now, before we look at the articulation on Anne-Marie, before that, of course, we're going to be looking at the figure. And just before that, we're going to be looking at the accessories. But before all of that, we're going to be bringing in the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. And I'll also be, in a second, be bringing the other figures that we've already had a look at, that being Magneto, that being Gambit, and that also being Wolverine. In the case, though, of her height, you're looking at Rogue being about 6 inches of that, or you're looking at the figure being roughly about 15.5 centimeters tall. I am holding out hope that our line graph is going to be on the steady incline again, having already abruptly declined when we looked at this guy. Here's what she looks like along with Magneto. Here's what the figure as well looks like with her bow Gambit. If I can get Gambit just to stand. Gambit has a little bit of a teetering problem when it comes to his ankles. I'm going to have to go and fix those. And then here's as well what the figure looks like with Wolverine. Now, Wolverine, again, if you were to look at how the line graph increased and inclined, Wolverine was a great looking figure. Gambit was even better of a figure. And then, of course, it just sort of plummeted a bit when we looked at Magneto. But based again on just the sculpting of what we got with Rogue, I see high hopes for the remaining of this line. What I see, though, with Rogue, though, is not a lot of accessories. The figure seems to be using a trait that has been recently used a lot with Rogue figures, and that's the fact that the figure comes with a removable gloved hand. The hand then has also a bare hand that you can then replace with the hands that she has currently in the sockets of her forearms. To show you first those other swapped out hands, she has this hand, which again only serves a purpose then if you're using this hand. If you happen to say lose this hand, and providing you have maybe another skin-toned hand, I guess you're okay. But if you were to say lose this would then make this pretty much null and void. It's basically her removing the glove then on this hand, and really makes for an interesting looking pose as well. To do that, all you're going to do is take your figure. Now, one thing about it, though, is while you are removing the hands here, you want to make sure as well, first of all, let me just take the gloved hand off. You want to make sure as well you're going to remove the cuff too, because it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense fine for the hand that's going to be removing the glove. So this hand actually can keep the glove on this side, the cuff on this side. But if you're going to be removing, say, this hand, you're going to also as well make sure that you're going to be removing this part. The only thing about it, though, is that they are so small, the likelihood of them being lost is quite high. So you want to just make sure you kind of remove them. I mean, obviously, they wouldn't have been able to glue these in place because it would have made no sense then for her to have a bare hand and then still the top of her glove. So you're going to want to make sure you remove that as well. And then go ahead and put the ungloved hand onto, of course, the other forearm. And then just bend the hand, of course, make it look like she's pulling her glove off. Now, I did actually have a little bit of an issue with her elbow. I at least thought I had loosened it up a little bit with a hairdryer. I might even have to take a few more passes with it. But like with the hands, you can actually get them in somewhat of a pose, looking like she's actually pulling the glove off. I always think that's fun. And it seems to be a trait lately, a trend lately, I would say, with Rogue, that they seem to have a lot of the figures seem to be doing that lately. Interesting, but for me, again, I would like to just have her pose, I think, which is the regular gloved hands. The only unfortunate trade-off, though, is by only having the other options available, she only has then the options of closed fist. I would have really liked if they could have also included like just regular gestured hands with the glove still intact. Anyways, just to quickly show you once again what that glove looks like. I mean, for what it is, it's a nicely sculpted piece, and it brings a little bit more charm, again, to displaying the figures outside of just the boring having them standing straight with doing absolutely nothing. For right now, at least, I'm going to just remove this hand. And just before I actually lose the little cuff, I know it's going to happen if I'm not too careful. I'm going to go ahead and remove also this other hand as well. I'm just going to put this back in place. And then pop the hand. Now, the thing also as well is with the cuff, you don't really want to have it too far up the forearm because obviously it's going to be very noticeable the fact that the glove isn't one piece. So you want to make sure you just kind of bring that up once you get the hand in place. Yeah, the only unfortunate thing about Rogue is that she's very limited on accessories, just being the fact that she doesn't have any other hands than other fist hands, or again, like you can go the route of these hands also as well. Also, I did talk a little bit about the fact I had to heat the hand, actually, the elbow more so with a hairdryer. I took a few little passes because it seemed like it wasn't necessarily a buildup of paint, but there seems something really restricting the elbow from actually bending. And I find even like with the shoulder, there's something, again, really kind of, again, it doesn't look like it's paint, but there definitely seems like there's something fighting against me when it comes to trying to move her arms. Head sculpt wise, I'm really happy with how this one did turn out. She is, though, a little squished in the face, but if you can kind of overlook that, it's definitely one of the prettier looking rogues that we have gotten. Now, I've seen some people, obviously, online swap this head sculpt off with another rogue and just, of course, keep the regular body intact. Like, if you like the really, like, the 90s design for rogue, which I'm a big fan of myself, I guess it's, for all intents and purposes, fine if you wanted to change out the head. I mean, I'm pretty happy with how this one did turn out. A little on the squished side, but overall, I'm very, very happy with how this one turned out. The hair is, of course, 2 different colors. She has the notable streaked hair on the top there in white. And it looks to be like the hair isn't necessarily painted. It looks like they actually did take 2 layers of plastic and overlaid them from one another. So, of course, you got the more lighter coloring of the brown on the bottom, and then they literally taken just another piece of plastic and put it over top of it. It doesn't look to be the case like they've actually painted it. She has her little bandana, very pretty looking face as well, like the little smirk that they've given her face as well. Again, like, it's kind of strange to look at her and then also look at the earlier looked at Gambit, where Gambit was maybe proportionally a little too long in the face. Rogue, in some ways, actually is proportionally too short in the face. But again, they're nice looking figures, though. The other thing I would say, not necessarily a complaint with the figure, but I would say like her jacket is probably the wrong color. The outfit underneath, I think, is fine for both the greens and the yellows that they've chose, but I feel like the jacket is maybe too green. Like, image-wise, I would probably have gone with kind of more of a greenish beige color, almost, or like a greenish brown color. Not as bright of a green as what we're getting at. Like, this is almost like more of like a forest green, and I think it's way too bright for the color scheme that I'm kind of picturing for Rogue. I mean, like, even on her packaging, she's actually got more of a lighter brown colored jacket than what we're actually getting here. She has a little Xmen symbol there on the shoulders, and actually on both shoulders, so that's a nice little bit of additional detail that didn't need to even necessarily be there. I always appreciate the fact that any company, whether it be Hasbro or not, takes the time to print these little extra things that are on the figures of arms, legs, any which way. She also has, again, like a loose belt. The belt is a separate piece that goes over top of her body, so I just going to move her jacket out of the way. It doesn't obviously go anywhere. It's not going to be able to go anywhere, but it is a separate piece that they applied over top the existing body. I'm sure they probably have used this mold again. I mean, obviously, any expert on Marvel Legends could be able to rhyme off down below how many times this body's been used. It's a good-looking body, I would certainly say. I wanted to say like Black Cat. I feel like this body's been used for a Black Cat, but I'm probably even stating the obvious. The colors of both using green and yellow. I mean, the problems always will be that when you're putting on one color over top the other, like yellow is always something that if you don't apply enough of it, it always looks like it's bleeding the color underneath. Or if the opposite, if you're trying to paint or spray paint over top of a yellow, sometimes what you end up getting is sort of this kind of bird edge. See, it's not like a very sharp line dividing the two. It sort of just kind of transitions a bit onto the yellow. So you get a little bit of that on the Rogue, but not to the point where it really does stand out a lot. The figure also does have already mentioned, not mentioned really necessarily with Rogue, but mentioned already in the other reviews. The figures do also have pegals on the undersides of the feet. So, you know, while there's a lot of posability at play for the figures, you can only really, from a figure standpoint, you can only do so much with having them just standing and balancing on their existing feet. So, of course, while not using a display stand in the other reviews, and even at the beginning of Rogue's review, I was just using myself like a DC Multiverse display stand. It's a little less intrusive. I mean, you do still see the DC logo, but you can just attach those. It's just the same diameter size of peg. You just plug it on the underside of Rogue's feet. For the figure's articulation, I'm going to go back to her head here first. Head rotates, for all intents and purposes, all the way around. For obviously, though, the longer the hair is, you can only clear so much of her. I mean, obviously, when you're getting over the shoulder section, too, I mean, it's going to break up a lot of it. It's going to kind of look like the head is separate from the rest of the neck. Speaking of also of the neck too, unfortunately the trade-off of having this figure with more of a skin tone neck is that you notice even more that she also has a hinge joint. So with the ball joint's fine, but with the hinge joint you kind of see it looks like she's got a big cut into her neck. It's kind of unavoidable unless you just kind of had the head a little bit lower down and you don't see it as much. But with that extra joint, the joint does serve at least the purpose that you can't have the head hinging down that far. And you can also have it looking up as well. And of course, you can rock it back and forth too. As for her arms, the arms rotate all the way around. Again, I don't know why there's resistance. You can almost even hear. Can you hear for yourself? I don't want to say it's a ratcheted joint. It's not necessarily a ratcheted joint. Maybe there's, I don't know, some additional adhesive or the buildup of extra plastic on the peg. But I find like with my arms, at least on Rogue, there's very visibly a resistance happening here. I feel like I'm not necessarily stripping the peg by doing this, but you can even hear it as well. Like there's definitely something extra plastic, maybe extra plastic on the peg itself. She doesn't have any swivel here in her bicep, but what she has at least is a swivel in her forearm. She also has a single hinge only in her elbow, so you can bend the elbow there as well, and you can rotate the hands also all the way around. There is technically as well a hinge on the hands, so you can bend the hands back and forth also as well. Upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. Where all the male figures we've looked at earlier have all had crunches, the female figure bodies all have more prone to ball joints, so you can rotate the body all the way around like this. Once again, we have pegless bodies, so there's no visible pegs at all attaching, say, for example, like the knees to the top and lower end of the legs. So I really like the way that that looks nice and clean. The figure has 3 cores the way up the thigh, a swivel cut, so you can rotate that all the way around. Rogue as well has a double hinge on her knee. And she does have still the same articulation that pretty much is the case with all these female figures. She has a hinge that goes back and forth this way, although again, like really tight on the joint for the ankle. And you can also rock it back and forth this way as well. You know, it's a good looking Rogue. There's a few little things I probably would have cleaned up on the figure as a whole. I think like one of the biggest ones being like the coloring of the jacket. I kind of wish the jacket wasn't as green as it was. I wish it was kind of a little more like a greenish brown. But other than that, I really like the way that Rogue did turn out, if I can only get her to balance. She isn't maybe as good as, say, the likes of Gambit. You know what? Let's just get ourselves a display stand. She isn't, say, the likes of, say, Gambit, but I would certainly say that she's my 3rd favorite figure. Obviously, I'm overlooking Magneto by saying that. I'm just going to bring in the other earlier looked at figures here, again, what she looks like with Gambit. Get him to stand here. Again, I don't know what it is about these ankles. The ankles seem to be fighting me this whole time of doing these reviews. But here's again what she looks like with Gambit, and here's again what she looks like with Magneto, or with Wolverine. I don't really even want to bring in Magneto, because again, like Magneto was such a disappointing figure. But again, for the sake of the fact that we have covered off now 4 of the 6 figures, I guess for all intents and purposes, I probably should. It's rightful. I mean, he deserves it. I should probably bring in Magneto. I mean, I like these. I don't like him. I think Rogue is my 3rd favorite. I mean, I'm kind of looking again down at both Storm and Bishop. That might likely change. But I think overall, like, Rogue does look good. Her head's a little on the more squished side, but proportionally, the rest of her body looks okay. Colorings probably could have been tweaked a little bit from here to there, but all in all, I think I'm overall more happy with the X-Men side of things than I am necessarily with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I mean, in a way, like, Magneto's sort of outnumbered anyways, considering that we have 5 X-Men characters in this wave, and only 1 sad villain with Magneto. He looks terrible, with Magneto off to the side here. Generally, with Marvel Legends, bodies tend to be used again, so I can't imagine that the mold that we're getting here for Rogue is unique to Rogue. It's probably been used again already with earlier female figures. Now, obviously here with Rogue, we get the benefit of having now the jacket over top. The jacket, again, is the only thing I would say is a little off on the figure. I mean, yes, the face is a little more on the squished side, and that's okay. I think the face is still pretty. The jacket is just one thing, though, and I feel it's just a small cosmetic change had it only been the case that they could have made it more of a greenish brown and not as maybe dark and forced green as what we're actually getting here. Now, not fully following the comics of the X-Men, maybe in the comics she actually does have a more of a dark green jacket like we get represented here. But if we were to go back, say, to the 90s, which of course this line is supposed to be based around the 97 X-Men, then I feel like the jacket, even on the packaging, it looks more of a brownish color and not as bright of a green as what we're actually getting. The nice included touches are by having the extra hands that she has, but again, like, those are the only hands that she has. So, like, if you wanted to get closed fists, you have closed fists. If you wanted to have her removing the gloved hand, then you have those 2 hands available, but that's the only other options that you have available. I'm sure with the other Rogues that I have reviewed, I probably reviewed 2 or 3 in the past, I probably could easily find maybe a hand that I could use as a swappable replacement for this, but I kind of wish that she could have also come included with a couple of gestured hands that weren't necessarily a bare hand, as for example. The details on the figure are very on the more lighter side. She doesn't have as much going for her necessarily as, say, Wolverine or maybe Gambit. The colors on this one are kind of more centric around more greens and yellows, but again, it's accurate to the way that Rogue would have looked in the 97, both comics and the cartoon. All in all, though, head to toe, it's a pretty good looking Rogue. I can definitely understand why there's collectors out there that may have wanted to choose the swap of the head. I'm not as interested necessarily to change a head for Rogue as I'd be a lot more interested to change the head for Magneto. That's a really, again, disappointing Magneto. But what do you guys think of Rogue? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you at all been collecting the 97 X-Men figures? And if you have, which is your favorite? Or even just, again, based on these reviews. Now, if you were to, say, take a tally of the 6 that we've looked at so far, we only have 2 still to go through, and that's, of course, Storm and Bishop. Those reviews will be coming your way. Of the 4 figures that we've looked at, my favorite are still, I would say, in the order of Gambit, Wolverine, and then Rogue. And, of course, by process of elimination, that means that Magneto is in the very distant last. I wouldn't even say, like, he's in 4th place either. He would be in last place. Whatever figures we will be looking at, whether it be Rogue and Bishop, whether it be Storm and Bishop, I think Magneto still will be my least favorite figure from this wave. Either way, though, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to still see the reviews of both Storm and Bishop, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below here as well, turning on the bell notification. And of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.